I think just whilst we wait for anyone else that joins us, please put in chat where you're from and what you're excited to talk about or listen to today. I guess whilst we do that, a bit of context is always helpful. So we started these Ask Me Anything sessions in April, and with like all good intentions, I guess things get sidetracked along the day and with the busyness of work schedules and so on. But we want to bring them back. So this is the first one we've done in 2023. And we really want to engage with people like yourselves, people in the sales profession. So we're all about professionalizing the role of sales. As we are passionate about it, we believe it deserves it. Of course, our way at Consalia is through work-integrated sales education. And Ben, especially, I know you know us from that experience. So it's great to have you with us. We're expecting a few more people to join, and I'm sure we'll have some students join us as well. So we're going to be having these sessions at the end of every month. We're a friendly audience, and I think I'm very excited because I always like putting Phil through his paces and asking him difficult questions. And I encourage everyone else to do the same. I think, he's written the book, so let's test him. And
Thank you, Will.
if you can, I mean, our ask is that you help us share with your friends and colleagues, just to get the conversation going. So we want to talk about sales, and it's not that often, I think, we find that you get the opportunity working in sales where you can kind of sit back and really kind of throw out questions to a like-minded group of peers to kind of solve any problems. And so prior to this webinar, we've had a few questions sent through to us, so we can kind of kick off with those questions. But please, everyone else who's on this, on the webinar, please submit any questions on the chat functionality, and we'll do our best to go through them. Anyway, I guess I'm in a privileged position because I'm sort of facilitating this discussion. So please direct any questions to Phil. And I know Phil might want to put me on the spot too, but I thought as the facilitator, I would ask the first question. And this is really because of something that I'm sure we've all been hearing a lot of, which is around the impact AI is having, and in particular, ChatGPT. So that whole welcome introductory note wasn't written by me. It was actually written by ChatGPT, and it spurred my question, which is, Phil, how do you think the influence of AI is going to affect those in sales, in a selling role? And the second part to my question is, could AI take over what a salesperson does?
Thank you, Will. And I was going to throw that question back at you as well, but I won't. I'll give it an answer. I mean, I think that sales is approaching a kind of new frontier in many ways. And I think traditionally we've seen the kind of sales systems and tools that are supporting the salesperson very much being designed. I'm talking here about CRM and other tools, designed to serve management. And and salespeople have, seen these as a tool to actually make their life more complicated and more difficult. And I've not come across many organizations who have said to me, do you know something? Our CRM is wonderful, and I just love spending time keying in information and data to it. And I think what's exciting about the future in terms of technology is that we're seeing that there are tools now being designed and built which put the salesperson very much at the center of their focus. So these are tools that can enable a salesperson to better predict, how much income they may be getting from their territories, or better respond to questions or about an RFP that may be issued. So no, I think we're really at an exciting point, and I think we've got kind of 2 points of view about Chat GPT. The one is that it's going to be an incredibly useful sales tool in the sense of making it much quicker for salespeople to, draft emails or do research. I mean, it's quite unbelievable the power that this tool has to get data together from different sources. But I mean, we are obviously concerned from an educational point of view about issues of plagiarism. And to what extent will these technologies start to kind of move into the area of manipulation and not being authentic, which is one of the key sort of values and principles of selling that so much of our sales approach is kind of based on. So I think it's going to be an incredibly exciting future. Actually, I think we've just seen the start of it, and I think it's really going to revolutionize how salespeople sell. I think your second question was, is it going to make the role of sales redundant? Or you're saying, is it the role of marketing is going to become redundant as well? I'm looking at Eddie here, listening in as well. So, no, I think it's going to make life much easier. I think we're going to become more productive in how we do things, leveraging these kind of technologies. So no, I'm feeling optimistic about it, in fact.
Okay, so we don't need to all find new jobs just yet.
I don't think so. I mean, I remember being on an airplane traveling back from, I think it was, funny enough, I think in Budapest, where you recently had your long weekend, Will. And I remember sitting next to this lady from, I think she was working for McKinsey. And when I told her what I did for a living, this is going back 20, 25 years. And I said I was in sales. And she said, why on earth would you want to be in sales? Sales is going to become redundant soon. And so, and she was talking about the role of inside sales and taking away from field sales. So, and here we are 20 years later, still sales as a percentage of population is about 5% of a nation's population are involved in the sales kind of capacity, either in retail sales or B2B sales. So it's still a massively important area of what we do. But no, I think salespeople are going to be enabled actually by the technologies around them. There may be some changes, to the way sales teams are structured. But I think that it's going to help us do more with the resources we've got. There may be some reduction of headcount. I'm not sure. I think it's still early days, really.
I mean, I think it will impact on salespeople in the sense of the skills that they may need to develop. How to leverage technologies, how to look at data, how to analyze it, how to get the most out of, say, AI in order to meet customer requirements better. Because I think the expectation from customers is also going to shift.
Yeah, I think it's we've always kind of talked about what are some of the key skills and competencies required of salespeople and sales leaders, and we talk about reflective practice, and we have positioned reflective practice in this world which is changing so quickly. As being, potentially one of the biggest, most important competencies required of salespeople. How to make sense of what's going on around them. And I think you're right. I think that these kind of AI tools will encourage people to reflect more upon the data that they're able to get hold of very quickly, and then make better and informed decisions. So I think this is going to make that particular competence even more important, kind of moving forward. Slightly easier to do because you don't have to spend so much time researching, source material. It's at your fingertips. So you can spend more time thinking about what sense to make of it and what your response is going to be as a consequence of looking at the data. Yeah, so I think, but I think we're all at a bit of a early stage learning curve on it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it sort of paves the way for a new future.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for answering my question. I don't want to hijack the webinar just talking about AI.
I know that was one of your pet topics, Will, so we could move on to Ben's question, I think. I can't quite see. Let me just have a look at it.
So we've got Ben Long, who's the client partner at QA. Hi, Ben. It's great that you're here, and let's meet up again soon. He's got a couple of questions, but he would love to get your thoughts on the first one. How do you recommend businesses/teams split account management and new business development? A lot of sales roles are a blend of account management, sales, then internal team management. For me, sales and account management are two different things. And those that excel at new business may not have the mindset to be an excellent account manager. That's an interesting question.
Ben, thanks for that question. So I think and there's been some interesting LinkedIn commentary on it as well. I can't remember on a similar question. Was it Ian Merhag? I may have mispronounced his surname. Was kind of believing that there's not a difference between the two roles, and no matter whether you're an account manager or new business, you need to have that hunting mindset that's important for new business. And I thought that was quite an interesting take that he had. And so coming back to the first bit of your question about how do you recommend businesses teams split account management and new business development, what I've seen happen in a lot of the accounts we have is some kind of sales portfolio analysis where you start to segment. You go through a segmentation process where you start to look at the accounts on two sort of axes. One is potential to grow, and the other axis is sales volume. And then within those two axes, you're able to sort of group accounts into those accounts which have high revenue and high potential for growth. And then you've got those accounts that have high volume but mid-level, if you like, ability to grow. And then you've got some accounts which are high level, but they actually just want a transactional relationship. They don't particularly want an account manager to look after them. It's a transactional focus. I mean, I'm simplifying the segmentation process here a bit. I think that it's important that we start to consider the concept of lifetime value of an account over a period of time, and that there are going to be some accounts that are massively important to you that may not be buying so much from you in the future. In the current time frame, but are going to be hugely, potential growth accounts in the future. And I think that if you had this account management, new business development kind of, if you didn't have those structures, in place, you run the risk of having a rather opportunistic approach to looking after accounts, and you run the risk of not being around to support those accounts when they really need your support moving forward. So my take on it is that it is a practice that I would recommend, that you would separate the two, but that you would, through white space analysis, have this new business development opportunities within your existing accounts that would be the focus of your attention, as opposed to completely new logos. But how you manage your account, I mean, it's a costly investment to put into account management. So you need to be very careful about balancing the cost of sale and cost of support with the amount of revenue that you're actually generating from the account. Don't know if I've answered Ben's question. I see we've got loads of questions here. So I'm very happy for this to be conversational, by the way, and me not just giving my answer, but I'd be interested in what Ben's point of view is. So can we allow Ben to take part, Eddie? And it'd be good to have Ben online as well. And I see Nigel's asked a question or made a comment. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Afternoon. Yeah, thank you for the answer. Really interesting. And I guess the cost of sale piece is, yeah, it's one of those things which comes up when you view salespeople going out and selling and getting those sort of hunting new logos and that type of thing. And then managing the sale post-sale is the thing which I'm trying to balance within my team in terms of who is going to be doing the account management and who do I want to go out and actively sell. And I've found that the mindsets that people have in terms of new business sales is entirely different to what I see as an account manager.
Yeah.
So balancing the roles with the person is something which I'm trying to sort of do, as well as doing the white spacing exercises with the accounts.
Have you considered, or have you done a review with your team around values and values alignment, and to see what skill sets tend to be better positioned for account management or for new business kind of development?
So we've started that process. We've not done it formally,
Okay.
but it is something which I'm going to be doing soon, because I do think that when people, like I said in the question, they go into a broad, a more generic sales role where they are selling into existing accounts. They're also trying to gain new logos, and they're also trying to account manage whilst managing the internal politics of working in sales in a company. So it's quite a broad 360 role which they have. Whereas I think that, and I think that this is being seen more in the industry, is that there's people that can be responsible for hunting new logos and then handing it over to an account management team, and those that manage it post-sale. But yeah, I do think doing the sort of mindset surveys and things like that would definitely come in handy, because then you can understand them as people and then trying to learn to the roles. Whereas I think at the moment, it's the role first and then trying to squash somebody into that role after.
I think you may be interested in, maybe we could send it across to Ben, is we have a segmentation analysis sort of framework that may be quite helpful as well for you, Ben.
Yeah.
To consider how you might segment the different accounts, and then
that'd be great.
And then how you support those accounts. So it's a bit difficult for me to explain on, say, sort of a matrix that. So that might be helpful as well. I know Nigel has probably got a point of view on it as well. I know Nigel's asked a slightly different question, but I don't know, Nigel, whether you could share your point of view on this particular topic.
No, pleasure. Well, I've seen both work. So okay. it as David Brock would say, it depends, which hides an awful lot. But I think, and I always revert back to this: what does your customer want? Yeah, if you're going to upset a customer by taking somebody who he's got the relationship away with, or her away with, then always listen to the customer. Again, obviously, Phil, you're right with regards cost, etc., and what's the value of the account, etc. But I always revert back to the customer.
Yes, on your point, Nigel, I was working with Compaq before they were acquired by Hewlett Packard, and I was working with one of the Compaq account managers that was supporting Vodafone. And the Compaq account manager had done an amazing job to change the relationship with Vodafone from being pretty bad to being very good. And then when HP took over Compaq, they decided that they would put the HP account manager in as the lead on the account. And Vodafone basically told them to bugger off. And it was all based on the relationship. So I think your point about, often customers have a strong point of view about about the sort of people that they want to sort of support them and how they want to support them. So I think you raised such a good point, in terms of using the customer feedback to influence how you then decide to support them. But that's great. Well, can we come on to the question that you asked, Nigel? If that's okay, we can move on to that.
Yeah, so for anyone that hasn't seen, Nigel just put in chat, we talk about our industry as needing to be viewed as a profession. Is this realistic, or will revenue always rule?
It's quite interesting, this. I mean, I think many of us operating in the sort of sales consulting or development role, and also sales leaders, have been wanting sales image, to change and for it to be truly regarded as a profession. And I think part of that, from our point of view, is what is it? What's the difference between a salesperson being a professional and in a profession? And a lot of this, in our view, is around education and standards and ethical practice, and having an underpinning in sales in that area. And I think the ISP in the UK is playing quite an important role as a non-for-profit body, to represent the ethical standards of sales practice. And I think some of the initiatives that the government has taken in terms of having sales recognized as a profession has been a big step forward, and we're certainly now, compared to even 5 years ago, seeing a significant increase in clients that we're working with wanting to embark on a professional, a degree, if you like, in B2B sales or in sales leadership, which simply didn't really exist as it does now, all those years ago. So I think that we're seeing, we're seeing pockets of it, and I don't think it's mainstream yet, but I think there's been massive steps forward. But your second part of the question is quite interesting, because I think that, like as we're entering this sort of recessionary period that we're in now, and the focus on revenue is also important. And sales leaders and companies are so focused on revenue generation that sometimes the practices that are encouraged by the organization for people to meet, quotas and targets, means that they may move more into what's the word? A slightly manipulative form of selling, and therefore tarnishes the kind of image of salespeople. And I think customers spot this. To your comment about customers, they know when the pressure's on. They see different types of behavior, which unfortunately just reconfirms the poor image, I think, has been in sales. But what's your point of view, Nigel, on this? How do you see it?
It's a fascinating area, and one I've banged on about for years, from going into schools and talking about a career in sales and wanting to actually sell as a career, rather than just, like the vast majority of us, fall into it by accident, if you like. I don't know of many people who leave school wanting to become a salesperson. An engineer, yes, teacher, doctor, yes, but not a salesperson, which is a great shame. But the kind of conundrum that I have when I'm looking at all this, and having worked in apprenticeships as well, with regards to sales exec level 4 and IT technical sales, is that apprentices can be excellent learners, turn up to all the coaching sessions, work submitted on time, of a high caliber, but who can't sell. And the flip side of that is people who are awful learners, don't turn up onto the coaching sessions, their portfolios aren't good or of a required standard, but who are promoted within 3 months as account managers because they can sell, or the perception is they're creating revenue so they can sell. And I think this is the conundrum, that they're creating revenue, but are they doing it in the right way?
Okay.
Where sales managers will look at it and say, well, actually, Nigel, I don't give a damn that they're not doing it the way we want them to do it. They're creating revenue. And this is where I think that there's a conundrum of, can that ever be seen as a profession?
I suppose in the same way that you can have, lawyers go through all the legal training, yet you can get lawyers who, bad lawyers and good lawyers. And I guess the same with doctors. So there's always the risk that people, could potentially cross the line. And I think it's amazing what you've done in terms of going to schools, by the way, and sort of raising the profile of sales as a profession. I don't know whether we've seen that so much through the apprenticeship. I'm looking at Will and Eddie here as well. I don't know if we've seen that so much to be the case. I think we have 90%, maybe more, of people who start on the level 6 degree apprenticeships actually completing, and we actually have seen quite a lot of evidence of those going through the program. We've done incredibly well. There was one 18-year-old I know from one of the tech companies who closed $1 million. Was it $1 million deal or something? And it was that's just one case. But we have got data from some of the clients we have about the actually general sales performance of people coming through the apprenticeship being just 2% behind the field sales teams that they've already had in place after 3 years of being on the program. So we're seeing some quite encouraging evidence that it is possible to take some of these younger people and actually put them through an apprenticeship program and produce some pretty good results. I think where we've sometimes found the challenge on the apprenticeship program is the expectations that people have once they got to the end of their program, is to move into account management or more senior positions, and those positions simply aren't available for them when they feel so sometimes we've seen a slight disappointment that they've not been able to secure their next job, if you like, within those that have put them on that apprenticeship contract, and so they've left and sought opportunities elsewhere. But I don't know. Nigel. I'm just an optimist on this one. I just think we've just got to keep on and keep that flag waving. And we hosted a brilliant event at the London Stock Exchange this year, and we had UCAS there. Talking about how UCAS could, 1 million young people go through their system almost every year, and they're now doing exercises to promote the opportunity of sales and apprenticeships through what UCAS can do to make people more aware. And they've got some very interesting tools that people can know whether or not they're suited to a career in sales at school, which are really good. So I think that, by joining up with organizations like UCAS, the ISP and all of us in the field, we can promote the idea of sales as a profession. So it's still very small and embryonic, I think, but it's growing. We're quite encouraged by it. I've seen a note from Eddie saying we've got some other questions that we should maybe focus on and as well. Unless you want to, I don't know, Nigel, do you want to?
No, as I say, I'm an optimist as well, and it's fantastic to see young people actually realize that they can make a career out of being credible and passionate about something, being relevant, being interesting and timely, and suddenly you can see the lights going on. And even I very quickly I get very fed up walking into these coffee establishments 2 or 3 times a week and being asked what you want to drink, and they put your name on a mug and you pay for it at the end, and and you walk past a line of confectionery and nobody takes the time to say, you know, you've done your drink order. Have you had breakfast yet this morning?
Mm.
No, I haven't. Why? Because we've just got fresh croissant out of the oven. Could I interest you in a croissant? Now, you know, even if you're at that level of a kind of customer service relationship, you can still sell and increase profit and get something more out of the job than just asking somebody how they'd like their coffee.
Yeah.
So selling, as I say, selling to me is everything. And it plays such a part of making, you know, even as I say, going down to a customer service role, it can be so much more enjoyable by pushing.
Yeah.
And pulling. But as I say, it's just great to see youngsters. You know, I went into a sports place in Barnstable last year and buying my son a pair of walking boots to go across Exmoor. And the young girl behind the counter said, "Would you like socks with those?" And I said, "That's a fantastic question." And, you know, yes, I'd forgotten I do need socks. Now, if everybody did that in business, you know, we would be competing with the other countries in Europe rather than sitting down saying, "Isn't times tough and aren't we afraid?" The nice thing about it was I didn't recognize her, which was bad of me, but she'd actually been in my session the year before.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
So remembered it, which was great, which was great.
Yeah.
You must have taught her well, Nigel.
It got her a sock sale and more commission. So yeah.
Yeah. Great.
That's
Well,
great.
thank you. We've got a question that was emailed to us before the start of this webinar.
Yeah.
So from Lee Ashton.
Oh, yes.
He said, with all the research available that growth mindset, well-being and happiness increasing performance at work, why do you think organizations still focus primarily and sometimes solely on skills training?
Yeah, so that's interesting, an interesting question. I think there is a lot of, what's the word? Misconceptions about training that sits quite often with senior sales leaders. I think they've come through perhaps schools of training and development based on what has happened to them in the past, and that you know, that they've been on skills training and they've become sort of very committed to particular sales methodologies around spin, it might be, or it might be solution selling, or one of these other methodologies that are around. And so I think that in a lot of the decisions about what sort of training should people undertake will come from the personal experience that sales leaders have had themselves. And that takes time, you know, that takes time to kind of shift. And so I think that's one of the reasons that that people still focus on skills training. But I think there's also, from my experience in the academic world, is when you start to look at the research that's done by sales academics into sales practice, a lot of the frameworks that the academics themselves research tend to be more behavioral than they're more around mindset and values. And I don't think that helps either. So, Lee, I don't know what to say, but, you know, I still am amazed at where people's mindsets are, even down to the way they issue RFPs. And we ourselves, you know, have found ourselves responding to a request for proposals, which is clearly a skills-based kind of solution that the customer's looking for. And yet every sinew in our body knows that, you know, that unless you get the mindsets right, unless the values and belief systems are right, it doesn't really matter what you do on skills. It's not going to work. And so it's it's an education process, and it takes time, you know, to kind of shift people's perspectives. But like I mentioned, I live in hope, you know, that people will recognize the importance of mindset. And I think we're seeing more of it in Harvard Business Reviews. We're seeing more and more reference to McKinsey's of this world talking about the importance of mindset. And so the conversation is moving away from competencies and skills development into more, have we got the right mindset of salespeople, inside the teams? And I'm a great believer that if the mindset is right, the behaviors will follow, and they will themselves develop the skills in that area. So, yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, Lee, but I hope I have.
It was a great question, Lee, and hopefully Phil's answered it. I've noticed we got Greg Keaveney, who's joined us. I wonder if I can encourage Greg, and actually Philip Chu, I've noticed.
Great.
You're here too.
God, two very experienced people. My goodness, we should have you answering these questions, not me.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you have any questions to put Phil through his paces, please do just put them into chat.
Could we ask Phil? I haven't spoken to Phil for a long time. I'd be delighted to see if Phil would be happy to kind of get involved in the conversation.
Sorry, Phil. I think we've certainly put you on the spot.
Hello, Phil. So nice to see you.
It's been a while.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if you've been listening to any of the questions that have come through, and I think you would be very well placed to give your point of view maybe on some of the questions that have been asked. So I could let you choose which topic is of interest.
Well, they're all interesting. I absolutely agree on the mindset piece.
Okay.
Mindset is fundamental.
Right.
Skills do tend to follow, but there is I wonder if it's people avoid. It's a difficult conversation to have with people in the whole coaching thing.
Yeah.
Rather than telling, and that's a challenge for a lot of managers. So is it easier to try and pick something that's like a skill rather than a mindset? Is it something they're avoiding?
Actually, that's a really
rather than necessarily work really. You have to work really hard with these people to change mindset. If mindset isn't.
Actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think we tend to, particularly with some of the leadership programs that we run, we talk about sort of transactional management systems and transformational management systems, and there's no doubt that trying to shift people's mindsets can sometimes be a challenge, particularly if you're sort of working with people who've been in sales for many years. They really don't want to change what they do. So I think you raise a really good point. Yeah.
And I think, so an extension of that is, where do you start a program? If you're putting a program together, you start with the leaders, and the leaders aren't on board. They aren't making that work all the way down. The thing's going to fail.
Yeah.
So I think the mindset of the managers and the mindset of the leaders becomes even more important. Are they really prepared to put the hard yards in to coach?
So you've mentioned coaching a few times. So is that, one of the magic ingredients, do you think, for, achieving transformation, is sort of having a coaching sort of culture within organizations to help transform or improve?
Yeah, I don't want to get into how do you define coaching, because there is that whole spectrum of so, but you have to do all of it. What it is basically a commitment to your people, rather than being committed to politics internally, or I want to get involved in customer engagement. You really want to be engaged in engagements with your people. And if you perceive or take the view that your sales team are your customers and treat them like customers, that is the focus of your time and effort.
Yeah.
And then the sort of coaching follows, because you're having conversations which aren't necessarily about how can we help you do better? How can we help you with your customer?
Yeah.
So the one follows the other. It's that mindset of, what's my priority here? And it has to be the individuals in your team.
Yeah. That's great. I wonder if Greg's been a bit quiet so far. It's unlike Greg to be quiet from Greg, are you somewhere in Dublin, somewhere in Ireland, I believe?
Hey, Phil. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Greg, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. Good, good. Very relieved after handing in my last paper at the weekend.
Yeah, so for others' benefit, Greg is sort of halfway through his master's program. So he's done the coaching module, Phil. Greg, you've been listening in. We've had a number of different questions on the call. Is there any comments? Because you play a big role in SAP and in the whole sort of sales enablement field.
Yeah. It's for me the biggest learning, like having been in sales and having been around sales for a number of years, I really think it comes down to. I agree with many of the points that have been made already, obviously, but I really think it comes down to commitment, the level of commitment for the salesperson, the sales manager, anybody involved around the sales team, and then that commitment has to be broken down into whether it's commitment to making the revenue or commitment to keeping the customer happy or commitment to somewhere in between the two, but the level of commitment has to be really clear and made very clear to anybody involved in sales, because it's just not easy. And some people get into it for the wrong reasons. And I think that's something that really needs to be communicated from management, recruitment, interviewers, all the way through the process, that they ensure that whoever they bring into the field is under no illusion, and they're really clear on what's expected.
Have you seen, maybe sort of putting you on the spot here, but have you seen a difference between, different age groups and that word commitment, and, whether their commitment is, to the organization, to the purpose of the organization, or, have you seen any differences across the different age profiles of people in sales?
No, I haven't actually. I've seen it good and bad in all age profiles, I would say.
Okay.
Some people just understand it more quickly than others.
Right.
And maybe that comes down to the whole self-awareness piece and how well they actually know themselves before they get involved and are asked to do something by, a new company or a new sales manager, etc. So yeah, no, I've seen good and bad in all age profiles, and no correlation really. And I know we hear about the millennials and the Gen X, Gen Z all the time, but I think those behaviors and differences can be kind of, it's a little bit black and white the way it's sold to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know that there's a lot of discussions that are emerging around sort of purpose-led organizations, and to what extent does that drive commitment? Sort of people being aligned to an organization, not just for what they do, but what is the higher purpose of the organization?
Yeah, that definitely helps, without a doubt. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, so newcomers to sales, let's say in the last 10 years or so, have an idea in the back of their head of what the old salesman used to look like, or the snake oil salesperson, and they don't want to be that, for sure. And they want to understand that there is a value system in place in the company that they're working for, and whether they agree with those values or not. That's certainly more popular these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And it does, it helps them, to motivate them if they feel that they're aligned to the values of that company, for sure. Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So how are we doing with the question?
Yes. So from Nigel. Nigel said, I spoke with 38 sales managers last week, all of whom pointed to a personal trait as to why they have been successful. Do you think not knowing the why then limits how and what they coach?
I do. Yeah, I think a lot of successful people that I've met find it difficult sometimes to distill, what was it that made them successful in a sort of structured way. in a structured way. And I think that without having a point of view about the kind of things that have made you successful is going to potentially limit your ability to be able to share experience. But that said, I think people are so different, and I think people have all got different strengths, and what may have worked well with one sales manager may not necessarily have been their sort of killer app, or their for another. But I think it helps provide a point of reference. But I come back a bit to what Philip was kind of sharing with us earlier on. If you come from a point of view where this is how you did things and this is what drove you to be successful, you're perhaps going to be more of a mentor than a coach. A coaching approach is going to be slightly different, where you're actually going to be working with individuals to kind of surface solutions to problems or challenges that they face. And I think that there may be a point in time where being a mentor is more important than being a coach. But I think the danger with just seeing life through one lens is that you become too biased, and you miss other opportunities to grow and develop people, and exploring other ways of perhaps being even more successful than you've been, because you are slightly blinkered in your approach. So yeah, I think it's a really important question. It's one question that we start with at the beginning of our master's programs. This kind of really defining what it is that makes you. It's part of being the authentic leader. But from our experience on that program is the extent to which people do that. There often people don't spend much time, drilling down to that level of detail. But I think it's certainly a great place to start.
Well, thank you for all the questions. Phil, how do you feel? You've had quite a few.
Well, I'm delighted that Nigel joined us and Phil joined us, and I know I've been communicating with Nigel on LinkedIn, so it's very nice to have the face-to-face contact with Nigel. And Phil, it's so nice to see you after so many years. I can't remember the last time. It was I think when you're at Reuters perhaps, and at Canary Wharf we last met. So I'm delighted, and also, of course, having Ben and Greg on the call as well. So it's really great that and hopefully this community that we have with AMAs, we can expand upon and grow as the years progress. So I hope you'll join us again if you can. And yeah, it's great to get the benefit of your experience, as well as for me to share a few sort of humble thoughts as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all, and thanks for your participation. And now we can go for lunch.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.